he had his wife in his palace, Ganga Mahir.
We ended one of our episodes, The Origin of Abayudaya. The video is up here, please check on it, with the death of the founder of Abayudaya community, Semei Kakungulu. His death was a very big blow to the survival of the newly formed Jewish community. His conversion from Christianity to the new faith was very dramatic and radical, that the community held it as a landmark to the shape of Judaism as they knew it at that time.
If you think of how Kakungulu became Jewish, he became Jewish by reading only the Bible.
Yeah.
And I don't think this man saw how beautiful the Jews were, because by that time there was no the state of Israel. 1919 there was no state of Israel, and even the Jews were even harassed in the whole world. And part of that you can see how they killed some of them. Which means this man only loved Judaism, and I'm also happy to be part of them.
He led his people to adopting Judaism and establishing their Jewish community unique identity and religious practices.
Abayudaya is not one of the lost tribes. Abayudaya are people who just declared to be Jewish, and they are Jewish by choice. And I think you know Kakungulu is a Muganda, and I remember that he went around and gathered many people from many tribes, which means they are not part of the lost tribes. And recently, in 1990s, there is a group of people who came and tested the DNA. I don't know what they found, and I want to tell you that I'm very happy to be part of the Jewish group that is Jewish by choice.
He promoted education out of his own resources by starting a primary school for the community.
He decided to construct that school, and it was called the Kakungulu School. And the Kakungulu, which means people who follow Kakungulu, is now called Napoya Primary School.
Okay.
So we are there. We are the part of school management management committee.
So it's like what you would say the public school.
It's now a public school. Yes.
Okay. He also started a yeshiva to teach his followers what he believed and learned from his Jewish visitor Yosef. Yosef stayed with Semei and his family for 6 months, teaching him some rabbinic traditions like kashrut, slaughter rituals, Jewish festivals and feasts. Yosef traveled with Kakungulu from Kampala, where he had gone to attend a court case on a dispute over Kampala land that is today's Makerere University land. Before becoming a spiritual leader, Kakungulu had been given 20 square miles by the colonial masters after fighting on their side and helping them, all being used by them to capture the whole of eastern and northern Uganda. He did not keep all of this land to himself, but he allocated some portions of it to build schools and synagogues. He gave some to Abasomesa as well.
When Kakungulu started the religion, he trained teachers, and he was teaching in Uganda, so he would send those Abasomesa, which we would call them like now we call them rabbis, but Abasomesa, they are called Abasomesa. It was the synagogue allocated the land. Then part of it, the biggest part, the Musomesa would take care of it.
Okay.
Yes.
So your dad was allocated this land as part of the synagogue.
Synagogue.
Some of the community members worked for Semei for some pay to sustain themselves, and some others in maintaining the synagogue. These ones were not supposed to pay the mandatory obusuru or the land tax that the rest of the people paid for staying on Kakungulu's land.
It used to be like 5 shillings, so it came to 10 shillings like that yearly, and they allocate year land. And I would like to tell you that the Abayudaya teachers and the workers of that synagogue, wherever that the synagogue was, they wouldn't pay the Busuru.
A Christian missionary, John Rusco, who visited Kakungulu and his followers in the 1920s, described Kakungulu's switch from the Malaki sect to Judaism, and I quote, "The zeal of his party is considerable and they show a great desire to learn, to read and to write. Kakungulu is a chief of considerable means and much influence. So he is able to build schools and employ teachers in his own district where the teaching is regular and the daily services are held. Kakungulu himself attends service regularly, taking an active part in bearing himself very much as a high priest of the sect. The teachers wear turbans. They observe Saturday as a day of rest and keep it much more strict than the Christians do their Sunday. I can, however, say for them that they are strictly faithful to their own beliefs and lives according to their moral lives. They have formulated a religion out of this strange melody of ideas and their conduct complete accordance with their beliefs." End of quote. Kakungulu had created what for many years will be subject to historical discourse and a religion for many to pursue. However, in November 24, 1928, a community barely 10 years old from formation lost its founder, its teacher, its leader, protector, and source of livelihood. The provincial commissioner in 28 November 1928, writing to the secretary, reported Semei passed on because of pneumonia that he refused to be treated. Abayudaya, on its page 2, reported that Kakungulu got injured in a fight with some Somalis, and having been speared, he lost a lot of blood, and due to his refusal to medication, he passed on. Another account is that he passed on because of an untreated tetanus. Regardless of the different accounts of his death, what is common in all of them is that he refused to be treated. What no one can dispute is that his death put the chances of his 9-year-old Abayudaya community survival to a minimum, if not at 0 chances, and shows very wide to fill in. What happened after his death is what we will be looking at in a short while. Keep watching. If you have watched this far and you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe. It is not clear how long it was before the Abayudaya put their founder to rest, but someone had to take responsibility to guide this community through this sad moment, the moment of mourning and the burial of a great leader. This person eventually became a source of a new hope and a direction to the young Abayudaya community.
After the death of Kakungulu, it was Kaoke. And on the part of Abayudaya or the Jewish activities, because even Kakungulu had his group over the administration of the land, but when it came to Abayudaya or this new introduced religion, it is Kauke who came second.
How many synagogues did he live in, under whom?
Here in Nangolo, it was Mosei, Jonadab, Kekki. In Nasenye was called Zakaria Varozi. In Namutumba, it was Zakayo Rwandi. And in Abuguye, Kaweke, yes, who was his assistant was Zakayo Mombia. Namanyonyi, that is Mugombe, his assistant was Andrea Lukale. Namagumba, Elia Musamba. And there is one which was in Putiputi, it was Paulo Kuta Kulimuki, who is the father to a lady who gave us some money to construct the Moses synagogue, the doors. She's called Narwada. And in Puti, it was Isaka Sako. Kabwangasi synagogue was led by Ezekiel Waliombe Kaina. In Namagomba, it was Elia Musamba. Yeah. They were over 20.
Okay.
Yes. And they were under now this Kaweke. The family was in Kasamvu. It is near Nabugoye synagogue, but the lower part as you go to town. Kaweke didn't last for some time. He died.
Kaweke's death plunged the Abayudaya again onto the drawing board in search of another leader. They knew they needed a strong leader who could help them understand the tenets of the faith Kakungulu left them, and a person who could keep them united and focused on the precepts of the Jewish tradition. The process they used to get the new leader is not clear. Who took over from Kaweke?
It is the one who took over is called Zakayo Mumbya.
For more than 30 years under Zakayo Mumbya guidance, and I must say that I wasn't able to know the exact time he led the Abayudaya, but I gathered it to be in the 30s and the 60s. The community stayed devoted to the Jewish traditions as its founder, Semei Kakungulu, taught them. They kept kashrut, observed all the Jewish festivals and feasts, and the Shabbat worship continued in all the satellite synagogues with the headquarters at Nabugoye Hill. Abayudaya commitment and focus stood the test of time. There was no guidance from external Jews apart from Jewish calendars from David Solomon. An Indian they met in 1937 and worked in a petrol station in Mbare, but later on left. And also maybe a visit from a now lost Kampala community member or two. For those 30 years under Zakayo Mumbya, the conviction of being the people of Judah, the Abayudaya, was alive to the extent that many did not take their children to school to avoid forced conversions to Christianity or Islam. And if you think education was the biggest challenge, you are wrong, because it wasn't. Lack of an external Jewish interaction eventually had a toll on the unity that Mumbya, their leader or chief rabbi, lived for and for a long time instilled in the community. Mumbya was only armed with what Kakungulu taught him to the many questions the community needed answered in order to thrive. Kakungulu had introduced the Abayudaya, a rabbinic Jewish path, but without depth of it as far as rabbinic traditions are concerned. The teachers or the rabbis had in their hearts the sense of responsibility to oversee the community that was as Jewish as possible, but they did not have enough information base to interpret the Tanakh, and especially the parts not directly easy to interpret as written. They also had a big challenge of applicability of these Jewish historical, social, and religious writings, otherwise called the Bible, to an African setup. This was the elephant in the room, and it almost split the community into two, and actually on one occasion it did for some time. One of the rabbis was a very charismatic deputy to Zakayo.
The relationship between Mumbya and Mugombe, Mumbya was the head of after the death of Kaweke.
Why did Mugombe leave Nabugoye and start another synagogue at Namanyonyi? Yet there was another synagogue
in Namanyonyi. Yes. Now, the reason why Mugombe left Nabugoye and they came to Namanyonyi and constructed a new synagogue apart from the one which was existing, the reason was that when Mugombe had a chance to meet Yefsa, he advised Mugombe over two things. One, he asked Mugombe, why is it that women here are not allowed to eat chicken? And Mugombe said it is now a tradition, it is a habit here, women are not allowed. Almost the whole Uganda, especially Bantu of Uganda, we are not eating chicken. So he said, no, you have no verse. Like I said, the verse said that do not add on the Torah or subtract. So what you eat, women should eat. And another idea was, when Mugombe, this man asked Mugombe, do you know why the sun comes from the east and disappears to the west? He said, no. God is in the west. That's why. So when we are praying, we should not face, our synagogues shouldn't face the east. They should face the west, where God is. Then Mugombe took the idea to Zakayo. And Zakayo refused those new ideas. He said, no, for us, even Kakungulu never saw this. So we shall remain in Kakungulu.
The dispute was about two things.
Two things.
Okay.
Women eating not to be not allowed or to be allowed. And the other issue, the synagogue shouldn't be broken and face west, because all Kakungulu's synagogues were facing east. So,
and God is not in the east.
God is not in the east. So
the sun goes to worship.
To worship God who is in the west. Okay. So Mugombe started a new synagogue in Namanyonyi. Although the Namanyonyi, there was also another synagogue facing the east. He constructed his, which was facing the west. Yes.
So this interesting. He left with some people.
Yes. Mugombe left with a group of people, including my dad. And why? Mugombe had many daughters.
Okay.
And he commanded his wife to eat chicken, and his daughters. And later on, the daughters lost where to marry, because the tradition around was women shouldn't eat. So he convinced the younger men of that time, not only younger men, but even older people who want to marry more women, to come and get his daughters to marry. And so that group that joined, that accepted to marry the daughters of Mugombe had to break off, including my dad.
So he had the carrot.
Yes, yes.
For the rabbit.
To trap the
rabbits.
Yes.
Okay. So how did this dispute ever end? This is one of the Abayudaya historical sites. It was used as a synagogue up to 1941, just before Kabbalah. One of the chiefs under Semei Kakungulu and an elder of the Abayudaya died. He was the owner of this land, and Jonadab Kekki was the Msomesa, or the rabbi. It also later on, in the 70s, became a sacred meeting place for Abayudaya after Idi Amin banned Judaism in Uganda. Get yourself an e-copy of this book, written by one of the rabbis that I respect so much. After watching to the end of this episode, subscribe to Shalom Africa by Chaim, and then scroll down the description below this video to get yourself a free copy. This dispute ever end?
It was in the 60s when the dispute ended, because Uganda gets independence in 1962. So the embassy the secretary from the embassy of Israel was directed to come to the east. When he came to the east, maybe he was following Kakungulu's group, so that they are Jews at the east. So when he came, he found a group, Abayudaya broken into two. Part of the group by Mugombe, and another group had remained with the old man, Mumbia Zakayo. So when he came, he visited both. He began with the group in Nabugoye, of Mumbya, where then he was directed to the group in Namanyonyi here, which had broken. The man was so very calculative that earlier or dead. Mugombe lost one of the idea of the facing the synagogue, facing the west. He said, no, you should lose that. The synagogue should face the east. Two, the another two, he didn't lose. For women eating what?
Chicken.
He accepted, no, you are right that the women should eat chicken like you do. So, he convinced Mugombe to return to Nabugoyi. So Mugombe broke his synagogue, which was facing the west, and he joined the Zakai Mumbya again.
Mumbya eventually resigned. The records have it that Mugombe took over because of Mumbya's age and bad health. There is a different angle to this, though.
Ariel already loved maybe, I don't know, because of the reasoning, he loved very much Mugombe, and he elevated him. So his communication was between Mugombe, so Mugombe became a leader.
The relationship between Israel and Abayudaya flourished.
The Israelis used to come to Mbale, and the focal person was Mugombe.
Okay.
And maybe that's why Muzei Mumbya was weakened.
Okay.
They brought us Hebrew books, Taritot, some old clothes. And most of the Taritot were very small. And in Uganda, women had the clothes called Bikoi. And those Bikoi, nowadays, they come from Kenya. So when they saw those strips like Bikoi, they thought, these are for women, because they were very small. So when they brought, Mugombe gave those Taritot to women.
Okay.
And it is women who use it.
It became Vikoi.
Because they never knew they were Taritot for prayer. So that is when I found, and I also got some shorts and a sweater. Yes.
Okay.
From Mugombe. And there, they brought a lot of old clothes.
Okay.
So we had that. They used to visit. And one day, Mugombe was invited to the embassy.
Okay.
It is authorized by the government of Uganda that Muslims are the right person to slaughter. And like Muslims don't eat pig. For the pig, they allowed other people. And these open butchers are even taken over by Muslims. But I wanted to tell you that the Jews, when the Jews came, they also neglected eating the meat prepared by the Muslims until the 1960s, when the leader of that time, who was Mugombe, visited the embassy. And when he visited the embassy, he was served with meat. I know he may not know whether the meat was prepared by the Jews or it was kosher meat. For him, he thought when he looked around, the only people served who are the suppliers of meat were the Muslims. When he came back, he organized, he told the people that please, we can now eat meat. Because when I went to the embassy, they served me with meat. We don't know whether this meat was served by, he was made kashrut. When he told many people had to convert, to change because he was the leader of that time. But my dad refused, and my mom, Deborah, said, no, we can't eat that. And the reason was that when these Muslims are slaughtering their chicken or their meat, they would just spread the blood, and some people would come and gather the blood and take and eat it, which, as the Bible has already refused. So, my dad and my mom said, no, we shall not eat. And our family couldn't eat. And my dad, by the time, he was taking care of 3 synagogues. One of the synagogues is Puti, where the headquarters were, and Nasenyi and the Kabwangasi. So those people didn't eat non-kosher.
When you say dad, who?
My dad is called Jonadab Kekki. Yes.
So I understand he had a thing with shrines.
Yeah? Hey, yeah. Another story I can tell you that I grew up, almost every family had shrines around this place. Even there are some few nowadays, but every home had a shrine, whether small or someone had big. Every home, everywhere, you would find a shrine. But if you had a shrine, you wouldn't be Jewish.
In every Jewish community?
In every Jewish community.
Okay.
All Jewish people couldn't be allowed to be with the shrines. Okay. And by that time, someone would convert. But the first thing they would do is to burn the shrine. Okay. And the leader to burn was my dad. And my dad is remembered for that. He burnt very many shrines, especially in Puti there. And Kabwangas, they were the first place where they were shrines. But he burnt them, and these people would invite, if they would find out, because some would hide them. So if they find you, they ask you 2 things. Should we go and burn those shrines, or we chase you out of the Jewish community? So if we would accept, because people would fear to burn their own shrines, you would use my dad to go and burn them. And he was not affected. Yeah.
So why would they? What was the belief? When you burn, what did they fear? People
had not known what causes diseases. Those shrines were made for polio. That if you go and burn them, then polio will attack your children. Many other diseases like Lukusense, this is called measles, Lukusense, and I tell you that we are survivors of that disease, Lukusense. I think I told you that even these Abayudayas wouldn't allow their children to go for vaccination against Lukusense or measles, polio. They wouldn't. So many of the people were put in a cell. And one of them is Andrea Nagore, the teacher of Namagumba Synagogue. He was arrested and put in jail, and he was imprisoned for years.
Whether the Israeli embassy or Oded got to know about the mix-up that happened about kashrut or not, it's not known. Because Oded was preparing to have 2 young men go to Israel to study and become rabbis to at least solve the problem of rabbinic traditions once and for all.
The Association of the Proselytes in Israel accepted to take 2 young men from Uganda to go and study Judaism in Israel, and then they will come back and teach the community. So that was 1960s, at the end of 1960s. One of them was the grandson of Shimei Kakungulu. And another one was the son to Mugombe. One of them, like the son to Kakungulu, has died. He's called Yisaka Kopolo, Yisaka Kakungulu. And another, this one is Ephraim Kadosi, is still living, the son to Mugombe.
The Abayudaya community was full of anticipation. The young men to be taken to Israel for the study were excited and ready. Not until the unexpected happened that changed the history of Uganda and impacted on the people of Judah, Abayudaya, and the Jewish history forever. It was the foundation of the hijack of the Israelis at Entebbe Airport in Uganda by Idi Amin Dada.